We stared in mute terror and disbelief at the massive construction. Well, shit, muttered Jake. There's things painted on the ground, Lena said. Looking down, I could see she was right. The circumference of the stone circle was drawn on the floor with a dark paint. Within, it was filled with stars, suns, and strange geometric shapes that made my head spin just from looking at them. Peering into the center of the circle, I could see that there was a body on the central slab. The dead man was sitting cross-legged, frozen in his final fatal position. Looking closer, I noticed he didn't have a gunshot wound like the others. A piece of paper, folded and yellowed with age, lay before him. Guys, come have a look. This one left a note. My friends joined me. Lena took the paper tentatively and opened it, careful not to damage the ancient page. I can translate this. You know German? Asked Jake, surprised. Lena looked at him, slightly amused, even in such a place as this. How long have you known me, Jake? 7, 8 years? She looked back down onto the piece of paper. It's very confused. The poor man was probably already half mad when he wrote it. Does it say anything about what happened here? I asked, my breath making clouds of steam in the cold air. Yes, it seems they were sent from Germany to carry out some sort of experiment? Ritual? It's unclear. The Anenerbe was a weird pseudo-scientific group, sometimes dabbling in the occult. This sounds like something they would do. What kind of ritual? I asked, a shiver running down my spine. He doesn't say. All he knows is they needed these stones, in a place where no man has ever lived. The stones were ancient, found in some old warlord's grave in Europe. The Germans didn't even know exactly how old they were, or who made them. And the suicides, does he say anything about them? Yes, after the ritual was complete, strange deaths started to plague the base. They couldn't escape. Germany was being beaten and no one answered their calls for help. Rather than being taken by whatever they had called into being, they decided to commit suicide. And this guy, what happened to him? He didn't kill himself. He says he was the one who carried out the sacrifice on the central slab, and he wants to know what he has brought into this world. He says he won't kill himself until it comes for him. We stood in silence, digesting the cryptic information. I couldn't help but think about the man's fate. He hadn't killed himself, and he hadn't been killed, despite being the one actually carrying out the ritual. It was the cold or the hunger that did him in. We shouldn't stay here. We have to keep moving, or we'll never reach Hercules Inlet, said Jake finally. We nodded in agreement. Quickly we returned through the passage. First Jake, then I passed through the door. Lena was following. She never made it out. The door swung closed behind me with a sudden, brutal force. I jumped and Jake cursed. Lena? Get me out of here! Lena screamed from the other side, terror twisting her voice. Get me out! I grabbed the door, pulling at it with all my strength, but I struggled in vain. It wouldn't move. Jake joined in, groaning and panting. Lena was beating on the door in panic, screaming and crying in fear. We pulled and pulled at the door, but it wouldn't move an inch. Get me out! Get me out! Get me... Suddenly, her voice cut off. The hammering on the door abruptly stopped. There was silence. No! Screamed Jake. He tore at the door desperately, but it still wouldn't open. Lena? I said, my voice quivering. There was no reply. She's gone, whispered Jake. It's taken her too. Help me open this fucking door, man! I swore desperately. Together we pulled again and again, but the door simply wouldn't budge. After half an hour, we collapsed into the snow, exhausted and defeated. I don't know how long we lay there. Our minds stretched to their limits had finally had enough. This time, though, the tears finally came freely. After some time, I picked myself up. The hollow, empty feeling of shock had returned. We keep moving. We can't stop now. I said. Jake nodded, but I could see the desperation in his eyes. We will make it, Jake. We will. My voice sounded hollow, a mockery. Jake didn't notice. We slung our packs and continued north. The following day is a blur in my memory. Grief, shock, and exhaustion had taken its toll on us. We were moving from muscle memory alone. When we stopped and set up camp, we remained silent. What was there left to say? Even if we got out of there alive, could we really live on like before? Through some mute communication, we decided to sleep in one tent. It gave us more of that naive sense of security, even though it had not protected David, or anyone else for that matter. When we awoke, we breathed a silent sigh of relief. We were both alive, both present, both lucid, or at least as much as we could be, given the circumstances. Once again, we shouldered our packs and sat out in silence. The circle was on our left now, unmoving and sinister. I kept glancing over at it, almost expecting it to move closer to us. Jake seemed to be pointedly ignoring it, refusing to even look in its direction. After several miles, he spoke up, the first time I'd heard his voice in some hours. Do you know what's the first thing I'll do when I get out of here? What? Confused as to where he might be leading with this. I have no idea. Go to Stonehenge. I stared at him incredulously. Why? Why in fuck's name of all places would you go to goddamn Stonehenge? Jake grinned. To take a shit on the stones there. I was silent for a second. Then I started to laugh. A hysterical, insane laugh. The type of laugh only someone on the brink of death, pushed beyond his limits, can have. Jake joined in as we skied forward. You can count me in on that, man. Yeah, revenge is Suddenly, there was a sickening, tectonic crack from beneath us. The earth shook and we swayed to keep our balance. The ground fell away. We had been traveling over a hollow in the ice, and without warning, it gave way. We fell downwards only a few meters, but the skis affixed to our legs made our landing clumsy. As Jake hit the ground, he let out a scream of pain. The air was knocked out of me as I hit the ground. I gasped, my lungs burning. I crawled over to where Jake lay. Are you alright? No, he said through clenched teeth, his face twisted in pain. I think I broke my goddamn ankle, Adam. My heart dropped, but I forced myself to my legs. Come up, I'll help you. Jake leaned heavily on me, and I slowly raised him to his feet. The second he put weight on his leg, he almost collapsed again. It's definitely broken. Fuck, Adam, it's broken. Let's get out of this hole first, I said, forcing myself to remain calm. We had to take this one step at a time. Thankfully, the sides of the hole we had fallen into were sloped, making a crude causeway for us. Slowly, painstakingly, I helped Jake get out of the hollow. Every step he would wince and gasp in pain. Once we were on the surface again, Jake sat down onto the snow. What do we do now? He said. I can't walk. I can't ski. I didn't know. Let's just stay here for now. Rest your leg. Maybe it's just sprained and we can continue later. Sounds good, answered Jake, but I could hear it in his voice. We both knew his ankle was broken. No amount of rest would help him. While Jake rested, I took a ski pole. It had been Lena's and broken in half. I cut a length of rope from our supplies and approached Jake. What's that? He asked. Splint, I answered. He smiled thinly. Didn't know you were a certified field medic. I'm not, but if it helps you walk, it's worth it. I tied the makeshift splint to his leg. Jake hissed in pain when I tightened the rope. All right, doctor, let's see how well this works. Swaying and grimacing, he raised himself upright. He took several steps. I could tell he was still in pain. We tried pushing on. Once again, I came to admire Jake's willpower. Even in horrible agony and at the end of his sanity, he didn't give up. But it quickly became clear we wouldn't make it anywhere like this. It took us 2 hours to go a mile. At the end of it, Jake collapsed into the snow. I returned, kneeling beside him. You need a rest, I said. We'll move on later. I'm no use to you, Jake whispered. I'm just slowing you down. We'll never make it at my pace. Don't talk like that, I said, anxious for my friend to not lose hope. It's true, Adam, he answered, looking up at me. I'm just dead weight now, and whatever's hunting for us, that damned circle, it won't let us leave, will it? It's been playing with us all this time. He laughed was an empty, morbid sound. For all we know, it's been leading us in circles anyway. Oh, the irony. Circles. Just rest, Jake. You'll feel better afterwards, I swear. He was silent for a second. I think I know what it wants. What? I asked, dreading the answer. What are you talking about? The circle, Adam. The man we found on the altar. He made a sacrifice to it, and it didn't kill him. If you make an offering to it, it may not take you. What offering? What do you... I trailed off, realizing what he meant. My heart stopped in terror. No, you can't be serious. Just think about it. I'm useless to you. I'm just slowing you down, and if this... thing feels like it's not going to get what it wants, it'll just kill us both. My blood ran cold at my friend's words. I can't do this. You know I can't do this. We don't even know if it'll work like that. Jake looked over my shoulder and laughed grimly. I think it just sent us a message. I looked up and started in shock. Somehow, even though we hadn't moved, we were now sitting inside a circle of gray stones. Looking back down, I realized that Jake was actually sitting with his back against the horrible altar itself. Jake, Please, let this be my last sacrifice, a last act of friendship. Let my death have some meaning at least. Grimacing, he pushed himself upright, using the altar as support. Stretching his arm out, he placed his ski stick in my cold hands. I won't do it, I said, my voice quaking. Jake looked me in the eyes silently, and my heart broke. You have to. Slowly he lay down on the altar, folding his arms on his chest. Tell everyone what happened here, Adam. Tell them not to come in our footsteps. This thing, it won't stop. It will always want more. We can't allow that. You have to get out of here, to stop that from happening. He closed his eyes. I approached him from the side, tears welling up unbidden. In nerveless hands, I raised the stick above my head as the cold, gray stones watched on in silence.